So I want to ask you something. I want you to actually think about what I'm going to ask here. When was the last time your partner said something to you that surprised you, right? It wasn't a logistics update, wasn't a complaint. Something that made you think, I didn't know that about you. For a lot of couples, that moment is way harder to find than it should be. And that gap, that quiet absence of feeling surprised, is one of the most honest measures of how exciting a relationship is. Now, today I want to talk to you about something that most couples never really get diagnosed. There's this kind of loneliness in marriage that doesn't look like conflict. It doesn't look like distance. It doesn't look like a lack of love. It actually looks like a relationship that runs pretty smoothly, that that never really blows up, but where people feel quietly like they're not really being known by their partner anymore. Loneliness in marriage rarely comes from fighting. It actually comes from filtering. There's a name for what happens in those relationships. And once you understand it, it actually becomes something that you can engage with and actually change. So you and your partner stop feeling lonely together. Here's what I want you to hold on to as we go through this video. Right? There's a habit that most couples develop over time. It feels like maturity. It feels like consideration. It even looks from the outside like a healthy relationship. But that same habit is the thing that's creating the distance. I'll show you exactly what it is. And at the end of this video, I'll give you one concrete thing that you can do tonight to start reversing that disconnection. But first, I want you to understand what a relationship feels like when this thing is gone. So picture a typical evening, right? You both get home, maybe dinner happens, kids get sorted, right? In our house, we're kind of winding down the kids, trying to get them to bed. The house is, starting to wind down. And you and your wife go sit on the couch, right? Maybe you watch something. Maybe one of you's scrolling, right? Maybe then you go to bed, or maybe you're already in bed scrolling and watching something. There's no fight. There's no tension. There's just quiet. On the surface, that looks peaceful, maybe even good. But now think about the conversation that didn't happen. The thing you thought about on your drive home that you didn't bring up, the moment earlier in the week where you felt something but chose to let it go, the question you almost asked, the thing you almost said, that gap between what actually happened and what almost happened, that's where the loneliness lives. Not in the fights, not in the obvious problems, in the conversations that never made it out of your head. And here's what makes it so hard to name in a relationship. Everything looks fine. You're not angry at each other, not really avoiding each other. I mean, you're together, you're right there. But something about the version of you that showed up in that moment is not all of you. It's not really you. Now, most people assume loneliness in marriage comes from neglect, right? Your partner isn't paying attention. They're checked out. They've stopped trying. But that's not what I see most often with the couples that I work with. What I see most often is this: two people who are both trying, who are both showing up, who are both being perfectly reasonable, and still both feeling like something is missing. And the reason for that is something I want to name very clearly. The relationship didn't get cold, it got careful. Somewhere along the way, without either person deciding to do it, both of them started editing themselves before they spoke, before they walked through the door. They learned what was safe to bring home and what wasn't. Not because their partner told them directly, but because over time, through small moments, small reactions, small withdrawals, they start to figure it out on their own. And so the version of you that shows up at home in your marriage became a curated version, a managed version, the one that keeps things smooth, the one that doesn't add too much weight. And your partner did the same thing. You're both holding back part of who you are. So now you're both living together. You have two curated versions of two real people, and the real people, the uncertain, complicated, unpolished, actual human versions of you, are left carrying things alone. That's what creates the loneliness, not absence, edited presence, sacrificing of the self to be in relationship. Now, let me show you a little bit deeper exactly how this develops, because it doesn't happen all at once. It starts early. Honestly, maybe like in year 2 or 3, there's a moment, almost every couple has one, where someone shares something real, something vulnerable, and it doesn't land the way they hoped. Maybe their partner got defensive. Maybe their partner minimized it. Maybe they were just too tired that day to really hold the space for the intensity of that share. And the person who shared it, they just take that information and they file it away. Not consciously, right? Not as a committed decision, but as information. Ooh, that topic's not safe. Ooh, that level of honesty doesn't go well here. You know what? That's probably best if I handle that on my own. So they adjust. I had a woman in one of our sessions one time. She said to me, I stopped telling him about hard days at work because his advice made me feel worse. She didn't make a big decision about it. She just stopped on her own. And 3 years later, he had no idea that she's been struggling. That's how quiet this gets. And it's when one partner decides that it's no longer okay to open up. And this is what makes this pattern so hard to catch, right? That adjustment, it feels like wisdom. Feels like, okay, I know my partner. I'm going to protect him from this. It feels like not making a big deal out of things, just, being low maintenance. I don't want to add some stress to the situation. It's not worth the conversation. It's not a big deal. All of that sounds so reasonable, even kind in a sense. But something else happens underneath that. You're disappearing slowly, one edited sentence at a time. And your partner, they're doing the exact same thing. They have their own list of topics that aren't worth bringing up or talking about. Their own version of, I'll just handle this one myself. Their own quiet withdrawals that they're mistaking for maturity and stoicism. So now you have two people, both thoughtful, both considerate, both systematically hiding parts of themselves that feel too complicated to bring to the marriage. Now, let me ask you something honestly here. Is there a version of yourself at work or with your friends that maybe is a little more honest, a little more confident, a little more direct, a little more willing to say what you actually think? If the answer is yes, that gap is worth paying attention to because your partner deserves access to that version too. That's the real you. And right now, they may be living with somebody who looks like you, but isn't quite all of you. Now, if this is uncomfortable to hear, if you're facing a little bit of resistance, that's okay. Honestly, this is not about blame. This pattern develops in even good relationships between people who genuinely love each other. It's what happens when two caring people try to protect the peace and accidentally protect themselves out of real connection and intimacy. And here's the thing that most couples get wrong about emotional connection. They think it's built by having these big conversations, deep talks, big, meaningful moments. And yeah, those things matter. But connection isn't primarily built in those big moments. It's built or eroded in those small moments. The moments you almost said something and then decide to swallow it instead. The moment you edited the real answer into an acceptable one that kept more of the peace. The moment you said, I'm fine, but both of you knew that wasn't true. Every time that you edit yourself in your marriage, create a small gap between the version of you they know and the version of you that actually exists. And over years, those small edits become a wall, not a wall of conflict, a wall of careful management. And on the other side of that wall, your partner is trying to connect to somebody that they can't quite reach. There's a word for what happens when you're known by somebody, really known, right? Not the performative version of you, the actual version, your fears, your doubts, your real reactions. That word is intimacy. And intimacy doesn't erode when love fades. It erodes when the real version of you stops showing up. The relationship didn't lose love. It lost access. So let me tell you about a couple that I worked with. Let's call them James and Rachel. So by the time they came to me, they described their relationship as good, but flat, right? This is a classic kind of roommate stalemate. No crisis, no betrayal, just a flatness neither of them could really explain. Rachel told me that James was the most dependable person that she had ever known. I mean, this dude was steady. He was calm. This guy was never rattled. He was like the definition of stoicism. She said, I just wish I knew what was actually going on in his head. I remember turning to James and asking him about that. And he looked, he looked genuinely surprised. He said, and I quote, I don't want to burden her. He said that she had enough on her plate, that he'd learned a long time ago to work through things on his own. And he was proud of that, actually. Like he thought he was being awesome because of it. His self-sufficiency, his ability not to need very much. And then I asked him a different question. I said, when was the last time your wife, Rachel, saw you struggling with something? He talked for a long time. He thought about this. And he said, probably not since way early on in our relationship. And that was the problem. Not that he didn't love her, not that he wasn't present, but that the version of James that Rachel was living with had been edited so carefully over the years that she had stopped being able to find him. And here's the truth underneath all of that. If your partner never sees you struggle, they actually can't feel close to you because closeness isn't built on strength. It's built on access. She was lonely not because he wasn't there, but because the real version of him had quietly gone offline. And he didn't even realize that was happening. He had lost his humanness. And that's why they felt so disconnected. Now, here's the reframe that changes everything. Most couples, I think the goal of a healthy relationship is to keep things smooth, right? No unnecessary conflict, no adding stress, no burdening your partner, right? With things you can handle yourself. God forbid you would open up and metabolize that stuff. All of that sounds thoughtful, but here's the hidden cost. When you stop bringing your truth, your real experience home, your partner stops having access to all of you. And when your partner stops having access to you, well, they stop feeling like your partner. They become somebody you live well with, someone you co-manage life with, but not someone who actually knows you. The things that feel most considerate, right? Not wanting to add to the pile, not wanting to burden your partner, stress them out, or create any sort of discomfort for them, keeping things smooth, right? Those same things, they quietly hollow out a marriage because intimacy isn't built on smooth. Polarity is not built on flatness. It's built on real, and real is sometimes messy. It's sometimes uncertain. Sometimes it's about saying the thing that doesn't come out perfectly. That's not a burden. That's what opening up and connecting with your partner is all about. So here's a simple way to check where you're at with this, right? So think about last week. Think about the last 7 days. How many times did you edit yourself before speaking to your partner? changed the real answer for an easier one, right? Softened something that maybe needed to be said, or maybe decided that something just wasn't worth bringing up. Think about that. Maybe one or two things come to mind immediately, things you've been holding back. Now, think about this. If your partner could see the uncurated version of you from that last week, the thoughts you didn't say, the feelings that you decided to manage alone on your own, the moments that you decided to swallow, would they be surprised? Well, if the answer is yes, that's not a character flaw. That's actually a pattern that can be interrupted. One honest moment at a time. Here's something that you can actually do tonight. Not a big conversation, not a hard talk about our relationship. One small act of dropping the edit. Find one moment tonight, right? A calm moment, and tell your partner one thing that you have been carrying alone. Not to fix it, not to get advice, not to start a debate, just to share and to let them into your inner world. Maybe it's something about work. Maybe it's something that you've been quietly worrying about and carrying on your own. Maybe it's something that happened last week that you filed away as, not worth mentioning. Say it anyways, because here's what that moment does. It closes the gap between the curated version of you and the real version of you. It reminds your partner and yourself that this relationship is a place where you don't have to be managed. You can just be present. And that's how intimacy comes back. Not through a big overhaul, through one unedited moment, then another, then another, until the real version of you is home again. The loneliness most married people feel isn't a sign that the love is gone. It's a sign that the real version of one or both people has slowly gone into hiding. And honestly, hiding feels safe, but it costs you being known. And being known is what makes the relationship feel like home. Imagine a version of your relationship where you don't have to manage what you bring through the door all the time, where your partner knows what you're actually carrying, where you know what they are actually carrying, where neither one of you is performing. That's not an unrealistic version of a marriage. It's just the one that requires both people to stop editing themselves. And it starts with one real moment and it builds from there. Now, if you watch this video and recognize something in you, not just in your partner, right, but in yourself, that's actually a really great sign. It means that you're paying attention, right? Most people never stop to look at this. The reason couples lose isn't a lack of love, it's a lack of understanding how connection actually stays alive over the long term. No one's teaching this, not in schools, not in early years of marriage. And so, just because you stayed to the end, I put something together just for you to help you with that. It's called a connection blueprint. It's a short, free guide, and it does something very specific. Most couples assume emotional disconnection happens because they got busy, but the blueprint shows you exactly which small habits quietly shut connection down and the simple things that can actually reverse that. We know that small things done often are what create change. And even in long-term relationship, even if it's been a while since things felt close with you and your partner, this is an opportunity for you to start turning things around. It's not a long read. The link is below. You can grab it if you want. It's my gift to you, but it will change how you think about what connection actually requires. Because it's very rarely that connection comes back through more effort and pushing. It comes back through understanding what creates it. So go ahead and grab that. My gift to you, totally free.